But right now I want to talk about the Ohio Secretary of State job. You know, the one that's been held by Frank LaRose for a very long time. He's termed out. We know Robert Sprague is in, and we also know, because he made the announcement on this program, and I was pleased to introduce him as he made an official announcement just a few weeks back, Marcell Strbich, who is an Air Force veteran, and he is a candidate now for Secretary of State, joining us on AM 1420, The Answer. Hey, Marcell, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Bob, good morning, and it's been a great run here. I've been pushing forward last couple months since that show and that question you posed and got in, and I've been a lot Northeast Ohio, and I've really enjoyed meeting with a lot of citizen groups up there and folks that really want to look at this next chapter in Ohio in 2026 and turn the leaf and bring in some people with vitality, some competence and character in that job.
Well, you know what I like is the fact that you're meeting with all of these people and then walking away with a whole bunch of their money. You're doing a phenomenal job of fundraising for this campaign. Give us an update.
Sure. Well, I think what resonates with people just is to be direct, be authentic, and be purposed, right? And the only reason I am really driving forward in this race, after having served 20 years in the Air Force and having really culminated and done the highest level positions at the Pentagon, is I really care about our election systems, our business services. I see a unique opportunity here with both a transformative governor and a historic president who's taken on the issues of trying to reform and revamp problems and issues in the election systems, which have been growing gradually over time and generally get dismissed because a lot of people that pursue this are really seeking this as a stepping stone. Whereas I look at this position as the Secretary of State and I say, this is the perfect position because this is where my skill sets in information systems technology, national security, threat assessment, all of that comes together, and I'm able to get the understanding of that system and provide real solutions.
That's well said, Marcell. And again, I don't have any other campaigns to use as a basis of comparison, but from what I do understand, the amount of money that you raised is very, very solid, given the fact that you're a newcomer. You're a newcomer to politics, period, complete unknown for to most of the state. And you have built a following and, again, raised a good amount of money. You have a long way to go, of course, because, Robert Sprague, the chief, competitor that you would have here in this primary race, is very well heeled because he's been in office for a very long time. So, dollars that are raised for one office can be transferred to another campaign. So you have a long way to go there. But does it encourage you, or rather, how encouraged are you that as an unknown, you are able to draw this kind of support this early into the process?
I'm very encouraged by it. I mean, I'm very motivated to get out. Every day I work hard to try to make as much contact and get that information to bear. I mean, I've got tangible solutions that I'm bringing forward. People do want people to come forward, not just bringing a problem, but bring the solutions. And they're doable. They've been proven out in various states or are being called for example, President Trump and his administration. So what we're doing in that sense is we're giving people an alternative. They don't have to select in 2026 just the latest rotation of candidates that have essentially been percolating out there in the system since 1990 and others that are consistently in. And so that's the key, is that we inform, educate, we demonstrate conviction and passion for the issues. And we're prepared to come on day one in this candidacy. I am, because I've worked, and you've heard me on your show many times in the audience. Every time I've done this, and not just through rhetoric. I do it through action. Last year, call to actions, 3 different legislative bills. So when people ask me, well, what could you do on day one? A lot of it comes down to the relationships I've built in the last 2 years, simply being from the outside. I mean, it's starting to catch, even with standard bearer Republicans that, are usually basing their support on some loyalties, friendships, it's their turn kind of mindset. They're actually looking at this and they're saying, this person's got a point, and I don't think that anybody's questioning capability at this point in what I'm proposing. So that's a good sign, and I think that's why we have over 1,500 individual donors to this campaign.
Fantastic. Marcell Strbich is our guest. Marcell is a candidate for Secretary of State. You know him well as a 20-year veteran Air Force intelligence officer. Speaking of intelligence, you sent me a message a couple of days ago about this Tulsi Gabbard revelation, and today she just brought the rest of the receipts. She promised them today, and they have already been delivered this morning, evidence that the intelligence agencies manipulated data and, in fact, manufactured data to counter the actual conclusions that they found, that Russia did not interfere with the election, did not try to help Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. So all of this information dropped, and you used it in your message to talk about cybersecurity and voting systems as well. Can you explain?
Yeah, I think it's very important that we get at this, because what happened was everyone embraced the narrative from 2016 onward, and they tried to suggest that our biggest threat to the election system was Russia or was some type of a nation state. And while that nation states do pose a threat because we are excessively dependent, Bob, on computerized voting systems, and they continue to certify them to a 2005 security standard, what I was drawing upon there is that all of these premises they built these arguments on as to invalidating or delegitimizing an election, turns out that that is now going to come out and be revealed that that was really driven monetarily. That was a lot of what we have spent money on cybersecurity. We're charging tens of millions of dollars. No longer are we getting grant money, right, from the federal government. We're charging our county commissioners to protect these systems. So now that this narrative is coming apart, and it wasn't a question of Russia's involvement or the ability of Russia to change outcomes, as the Democrats were very heavily pushing through their media operatives in the 2020 timeframe and prior to that. Now we can re-examine, is the cost basis for us to have such a dependent system on computerized systems worth it? And the answer is absolutely not. Because here in Ohio, we already have a system partially of pre-printed hand markable ballots. We need to expand that fully to all 88 counties. And we don't need to completely depend upon the computerized ballot marking devices as the primary method of casting. So I'd go to pre-printed hand markable ballots. I would address issues of voter ID to the extent that we also cover voter ID for mail-in ballots, which we don't have, allowing 1 million Ohioans to cast a ballot in each election without that. And I would start to really pull back the ability of third-party voter engagement groups who are using a wide-open period of 28 early voting days to flood the zone with false registrations, which there's evidence of that last year. So we would push closer for a same-day in-person voting day, which has been called upon by President Trump. We'd close our loopholes with voter ID. We'd pull back and, if needed, prohibit the entirety of voter engagement, for-profit nonprofits in their involvement of certain activities. And when you do all of that, you reduce the risk and you increase voter confidence. And that's what's at the basis of everything: institutional trust and transparency.
And that's what's been missing, quite frankly. You know, I mean, and not just because of 2020, but we have seen a number of other very questionable outcomes of elections because of some irregularities and some question about voter, not just identification, but citizenship, and rights. It is important. You also spoke in your message, and if you can talk about this a little deeper, about China. You talked about the DOJ suppressing the investigation of credible intelligence of Chinese interference in that 2020 election. So we have our own issues with respect to, some of the policies that you have been promoting and talking about as far as securing our elections. But we still do, and you've talked about this, but not specifically to China, have to worry about other countries that do intend to interfere.
Yes, and we have 50 different election systems, right? Because each state has their own constitution, their own laws, their own election policies, and every state has some degree of susceptibility, and Ohio is no different. What you're referring to...
Do you like that, by the way? Marcell, do you like that, by the way, before you go on with the question I just asked you, do you like the fact that there are 50 different states and they don't have to run the same system?
I would rather have a system like that than have federalized, centralized control, which was something that was being proposed by Democrats in the prior when they controlled Congress. And something like that, you don't have our elections need to be brought down to the lowest level possible. Bottom-up elections with true transparency and public oversight. And so that means we as citizens have to get involved again in the process of counting votes, supporting our local election officers and officials, and being a part of this civic duty and responsibility. What we've done is we've allowed these systems to monetize, and we've allowed third parties to take control of the system. And the more we've done that, the more comfortable we've become and complacent to allow these processes to be done without our understanding, without our purview, And that's why we're struggling right now to find people, in my estimate, to actually work polling locations. As far as China, yes, they did attempt, I think, to influence the 2020 election and potentially flood the zone with especially in states where you have automatic mailing of voter absentee ballots. And they were shown in this suppressed investigation by the DOJ to have been filling out and using, doctored driver's licenses or information. If we think in Ohio that that's not something that we can be exploited on, I would say anybody saying that's not aware of the threat. And that's why I think a Secretary of State, like with my background, gives us a fighting shot to detect that and build systems so that we can detect that and stop that from even occurring. And that's the key here, I think, in moving forward, is to prevent nation-state interference, as well as third-party groups that have no business monetizing and pushing their political agenda through the election system.
Got it. And that's well received, Marcell. The reason I asked about, I don't like the idea of a federally regulated election system either, where it's centralized control. But I hate the fact that so many other jurisdictions, even as you say, from the smallest up, that they can tinker with things and allow, for example, illegal aliens to vote in their local elections. Illegal aliens vote in a local election, then it quickly can, it's a hop, skip, and a jump away from voting in state elections or federal elections. I don't like the idea that some states, cities, counties, or states can allow, no voter ID. Whatsoever to be required. In fact, not only not require voter ID, but ban anybody from asking for voter ID. You understand my point? I don't like the idea of federalization, but I don't like the idea of certain locations going rogue.
Yeah, that's clear as day, and I agree with that. I would say to you that, the mess began with the federal government's involvement in injecting their premise of everyone gets registered, and then they can figure out how they can check them for credibility eligibility as a voter. We would need to do a combination of both congressional lawful changes to scale back or pull back on the original bills that caused this kind of fragmentation and problems in the state system. But to be honest with you, Bob, the way to address this is each state has to inoculate itself, and it's going to take people who do understand the election laws and systems and to chip away at this piece by piece. It took us 20 years to get to this point of really loose eligibility verification and allowing other parties to influence and involve themselves. And it's partly because, I'll be honest, we've prioritized convenience and ballot accessibility over security and verifiability. And so what my candidacy does is it changes that equation. We prioritize security and verifiability first, and then once we meet metrics, we look at the other components of that, which is ensuring that nobody's civil right is disenfranchised. And that's where the balance comes in. We just haven't had a balanced system, and it's been about electability for those, I think, that have had the honor and privilege to serve in some facet.
Yeah, again, well said, because you're right. Certainly verifiability has to be number one, and accountability. But convenience is important too. We don't want to make it harder. That's the thing. People like you, who are very, very strong election integrity advocates, are accused of not wanting it to be convenient because you don't want more people to vote. That if more people vote, we have a problem. That is not the case at all. It's just that if more people vote and the vote is less reliable and less verifiable, what did they vote for? What is the outcome of that going to be? So convenience would be nice, but it has to take a backseat to verifiability, right?
Yes, I agree with that. And that's why my policy approach would be to continue early mail-in ballot voting, but make it invalid excuse-based. So, in other words, those who are confined, disabled, those who cannot be in the precinct to vote on Election Day. And we had laws on the books since 1977. I believe up to 16 different criteria existed prior to COVID. It's COVID that blew all of this open. And now that COVID is over, we kept the very loose controls in place, and we never pulled it back. So that's so common with government. It takes them 5, 10, 15 years to even revisit, in my experience, some of these issues. And we've got to go back to a system that's more assured, unless we want to continue people distrust. And if they distrust, then they don't go and vote. So in effect, too much convenience and lack of responsibility on the part of a person does create a system that and in the end reduces turnout, and the very same things that the people who tried to create a system to boost turnout actually end up doing the opposite, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, Marcell. We're talking to Marcell Strbich, candidate for Ohio Secretary of State. We talked a few months ago about the wonderful job that he does as an election integrity advocate. We talked about why don't you just run for this office yourself, because you seem to have all of the answers to all of the questions regarding our secure elections in the state of Ohio. So he has done that. Marcell, we talked about your successful fundraising thus far, and of course you want to keep that up. We'll send people to your website here in a moment. But one other question about the campaign. How important are endorsements to you? And when I say endorsements, I don't mean just from individuals or public figures, but I'm talking about from Republican organizations like the Republican GOP, the state GOP, the Central Committee, and these sorts of things. Are you going to get an opportunity to compete for those endorsements? And how important are they in the grand scheme of things?
I'm glad you brought this topic up. Endorsements are very important. But I think, and I have certainly attained a number of them. United Hellenic Voters Association, which is a nice ethnic group that advocates for Greek Americans that are entrepreneurs. Cleta Mitchell, President Trump's election reform advocate and subject matter expert, and even across the state, John Adams, Bernie Willis, Scott Wiggum. I may miss a few here or there, Jen Gross. Others that have been very critical come along with me. That's important because that demonstrates. But one of the things we have to really be aware of, and those who really want to see a fair and even election here in the primary, is where's the Ohio Republican Party going to go, right? So they endorsed John Husted, they endorsed Vivek. They had solid reasons to do so in May, albeit it was unprecedented to do those type of endorsements. But now the opportunities are going to come up, and the candidates that are in these competitive races who are already elected officials will be pushing and are to get endorsed by the party, so they can have infrastructure and resources at their hand, which, shouldn't be necessary if you've got the right agenda to run on and you want to win votes and meet and engage voters, which is what I'm doing. So that would be one area I think that it would be good to see the Republican Party allow this, as well as other candidates, to allow this race to play out and allow us to get our ideas out without anybody putting a pulse on this particular race. And the key to that, I think, is where the state central committees of the Republican Party and the central committees in the counties go. And that's why we're going around the state and meeting with a number of people that have, are curious about what this campaign is offering and what it's going to do. And so I'm going to continue to do that, but that's a big part of where we are currently. And I'd encourage anyone who knows state central committee folks to kindly ask them for, their allowance to let this campaign play out and not necessarily take any endorsements. This is a competitive primary.
I think that's fair. I really do. And that's all you can ask for is an opportunity for fundamental fairness, and let the people decide. Let's not push them in any different direction, particularly in a competitive primary like this. So Marcell, you're doing great. Obviously, as I said, as far as your fundraising goes, but this is a long campaign and it's an expensive one, and you want to reach all 88 counties. You want to get out there around, and it takes some support. So how else can people support you?
Yeah, people can support me really with any donation today. I was asking for $17.76, which is something that's in honor of our nation's 250th a couple weeks back. But I would ask if they would go to Strbich, S-T-R, B as in boy, I-C-H, 4, F-O-R, Ohio.com. Strbich, S-T-R-B-I-C-H, 4, Ohio.com. And there's a button to donate. And if you believe in a political outsider and somebody who's working to bring the issues of the people, transparency, public oversight, and accountability, and good governance back, I am the candidate to do that in 2026, and I thank everybody in this audience for being such great supporters.
Yeah, and in addition, I'll just kind of advise people, in addition to going to StrbicForOhio.com, follow Marcell, learn more about his platform, about his ideas, exchange ideas with him on social media, particularly X. He is at Marcell with 2 L's, Strbich. He just spelled it for you, S-T-R-B-I-C-H. But follow him there and then share his message with other people on your platform, because grassroots is where it's at, particularly if you are the underdog and you are the political outsider coming in to challenge establishment candidates, then you need grassroots support, so you can do that on social media as well. Marcell, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. We will, of course, have many more conversations between now and primary day. We appreciate it today. Thank you.